your car, man! Don't get out!
There's something alive in the sand, and it kills!
Hello and welcome to another bad movie review. This time we are looking at 2015's The Sand. This beach is killer is the tagline. Now this was filmed in 2015 and there are differing accounts as to when it was actually released. Some places say it was released in 2015 on DVD, others say 2018. I think it's probably both. This one runs about 84 minutes and I believe it's the directorial debut of Isaac Gabaeff. I'm not sure how to pronounce his name, so hopefully I didn't butcher that too badly. Based on a script by Alex Greenfield and Ben Powell. Now this is largely a cast of people that are fairly minor actors, a lot of B movies. The most notable names in here are Jamie Kennedy and Mitchel Musso. Mitchel Musso mostly because he was on Hannah Montana in a show called Two Kings, and Jamie Kennedy because he was a popular comedian and actor for quite some time. I'm not familiar with most of the rest of the cast, but we'll talk about them in a minute. So this opens with alternating scenes between the morning time at the beach and the night before when there was a party going on. It's spring break, a bunch of college-age kids are out partying, and then we're interspersed with these like early dawn scenes as the kids are slowly waking up. We do get our first plot point at 2 minutes and 48 seconds in, so you think that's gonna lead to some more of that, but it's just really not. But it is a nice sign for any B movie to have plot early on in the film. Well, it turns out during the party, two of the partygoers, a guy named Gilbert and one of his friends, find something large and circular on the beach. They bring it up by the campfire and leave it, and this giant orb is what is going to, of course, cause the problems. They say it's slimy and it's weird, and then they just kind of ignore it and forget about it. It takes a lot longer than you'd think for people to put one and one together with this thing, trust me. Now, the actual horror elements do kick in around the 10-minute mark as the college students are kind of coming around and trying to do stuff. So while the partiers are waking up, one girl, Marcia, tries to get off of the bench that she's sleeping on and begins screaming. And when Vance goes to help her out, he falls face first on the sand and gets part of his face ripped off in what is the really goriest scene of the film as far as actual disturbing gore. Of course, all their cell phones are locked up in the trunk of a car because it's supposed to be a Vegas weekend where there's no chance of any of their shenanigans being put on the internet. But because they're in the trunk and nobody can get on the sand without potentially getting eaten by this unseen creature, they try to start the car up, but the so-called battery is dead, even though you could hear the sound of the engine trying to turn over, which would indicate it was more likely the alternator. But that's neither here nor there. Don't be a mechanic. Just let your brain kind of drift away into a restful state while you watch this popcorn flick. One girl, Kaylee, figures out very quickly, and she did try and warn people that the sand was dangerous. They ignored her, and then two people are dead, and she's sort of trying to piece it together. And that's around the time they kind of realized that everybody that had been sleeping on the beach probably got eaten by the monster. Now, we'll never know how many partygoers there actually were because I was too lazy to count them all by going back in the beginning of the film and counting everybody. But this movie does have a body count of 7. I didn't count the other partygoers because, like I said, I was too lazy to rewind it and count everybody at the party that didn't make it. So I just counted the actual people that were the morning time and on survivors. So we see these little thin membrane fibers kind of coming up through the ground, and that's what are these like little feelers for the creature, and it's also very rapidly eating people. It's a little unclear exactly how it devours people, but they just sort of disintegrate in the sand most of the time. And that means that these survivors have to play the most complex beach version of The Floor is Lava that you've ever seen as they try and get away from the creature. They do figure out that it has parameters, and the characters are portrayed as reasonably intelligent people. They make pretty rational decisions, and their attempts to get away from the creature and off the sand. And they do see that one person is able to walk around on the beach, but since the creature pulls people into the sand, the methodology is lost. There are a few flaws in this movie. The beach patrol guy, nobody apparently missed all day when he went missing. The fact that there weren't any boaters or anything like that at this closed beach is a bit of an issue as well. And there were a couple ways they probably could have accessed their phones or got from one location to another, but it was pretty well explained why things didn't quite work out the way you would think. Overall, the movie is pretty fun. It's very fast paced. It's got a lot more depth than you would think if you really pay attention to it, because the college students really do figure out quite a few ways creatively of trying to avoid the monster. And while most of them die, they are making the effort and trying to get around it. Like, they do figure out the fire pit is useful, although that wouldn't have been that useful later on as the entire day passes. And there is a man stuck in a barrel, which is pretty fun. So overall, I think it was pretty smartly written. Visually, it was very well shot. The score was really good. Unfortunately, one of the main problems I had with this movie is that you don't see enough of the monster until really the very end. And I think that was a budgetary issue. And that's actually not too bad. It just makes it look like they're playing The Floor is Lava for quite a bit of the movie. But also the party scenes, the music is way too loud because you could barely hear the dialogue in a lot of those scenes. And I think that was probably the worst part of the movie because you can't understand a lot of the dialogue over the music. But once they actually go to the morning time and on, then the score is really well done. It's very dramatic and fits the theme that they're going for very, very well. I thought the acting was pretty good. Some of these actors have a really good career ahead of them in B movies if they really stick to that genre. Some of them may break through into TV series or other movies, but I think likely they're probably gonna get stuck in the B movie market, and there's no shame in that because that's what I like watching, because then I get to see them all again in other movies. But I thought it was a pretty solid cast. Brooke, Butler, Cynthia, Murell, Cleo, Meagan, and even Nikki, Leigh all did a really good job. Jamie Kennedy was a little over the top, but it kind of worked. Geyer, who plays Jonah, was a little rigid in this one. I don't think he really wanted to be there. It seemed like his acting was just a little stiff, but he's got a lot of potential too. So the whole crew of actors was really good. There was one scene where I thought I saw a crewman in the background because there was someone moving around and it was out of focus, but it's still there. Otherwise, the movie was good, solid cheese. It's a goofy, not real in-depth psychological film, but it is a fun horror film. I thought the techniques they were using to get around showing the monster were actually pretty good and fit well within the budgetary constraints they had. And most of the CGI didn't look too bad. I think it gets a lot of negative reviews for the CGI for some reason, mostly due to people's affinity for the highest grade cinema that they could have ever seen. And you can't compare the two. But for a B movie, especially on a budget that this looked like it had, it actually worked pretty well and it was pretty well done. So I'm going to recommend this one. I don't think it's going to be for everybody, but if you want a fun, entertaining B movie that definitely had kind of an 80s feel to it, I would absolutely recommend this. It does remind me a lot of Blood Beach from 1981, but it does have quite a few differences. And coming in at only about 84 minutes, it's not that long of a film where you're going to get too bored with it. And the pacing is pretty good, so you don't have to worry too much about getting bored. There's a bunch of women running around in bikinis through the entire thing, so at least there's some eye candy to kind of break up the routine. But there's only 3 plot in here, and I think they're all from the same person. And they're early in the film. So unfortunately, they didn't break out more of that sweet B-movie nectar of plot, but, you know, you can't have that every time in every movie, sadly. But still, I thought this was a pretty fun film. It is very hard to find on physical media, so if you can find a physical copy of the DVD, I would absolutely say get it if you can, because this is kind of one of those movies that I think is going to be overlooked because it is basically a cinematic version of The Floor is Lava. But I had fun watching it. I thought it was shockingly good for what it was. And I think that's largely due to the actors and the cinematography. The director did a good job. I hope he could get more work because this was actually a surprisingly fun film. But that is going to do do it for this episode. Thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. If you enjoyed the episode, please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future reviews. If you'd like to help the channel out in other ways, links are in the description to various support methods. And as always, we hope to see you on the next one.